Hello super friends and welcome to DC TV Talk. This is the show where we talk all things Supergirl, The Flash, Legends of Tomorrow, Arrow and Black Lightning, and in today's video we're going to be discussing the potential villains for Arrow Season 7 and breaking down who they are, them being the Longbow Hunters. So let's discuss. And just quickly before we jump into the video, if you enjoy my content and you want to see more, make sure you check out my podcast, Honor Thy Podcast, which is the weekly DC TV Arrowverse podcast I do. Link will be in the description below. So in Arrow Season 6 we had the main villain in the form of Ricardo Diaz, and he had some links to a group of characters called the Longbow Hunters. These characters were name dropped in the Arrow Season finale by Anatoly, and we kind of got the idea that perhaps they were going to be introduced, but they were only name dropped. However, this does have us theorizing that perhaps the Longbow Hunters will come into full force in Season 7. So who are the Longbow Hunters? Well, in the comics they are a group of assassins and a group of martial arts experts led by Richard Dragon. Now Richard Dragon is the actual comic book version of who is Ricardo Diaz, and Ricardo Diaz was Richard Dragon, and they're basically the same character. Basically Ricardo Diaz on Arrow is the Arrowverse equivalent of Richard Dragon, essentially. And these characters are very much skilled fighters and very intelligently done so. And also, one thing I like is that in the finale, Oliver is aware of the Longbow Hunters. He knows who they are, and he says, you know, they're assassins that even the League are afraid of. So even the League of Assassins are afraid of these guys, and are kind of scared of what they can do, which must mean they are extremely powerful and also extremely talented in the martial arts arena. And this does beg some questions as to how Ricardo Diaz knows them, and also how he has this connection with them. So let's talk about Ricardo Diaz for a minute. Ricardo Diaz, obviously having surviving the Season 6 finale, is going to be returning next season, and this does have me thinking, are they going to go down the Richard Dragon storyline? Is this character actually got a bit more of a backstory than was actually shown to us in Season 6? Does this character actually have a big martial arts key? Does he have this big backstory about going to, you know, kind of like this temple in a remote country, training, and actually becoming a martial arts expert under the Longbow Hunters? And is this how he knows them? Because, and I apologize if you can hear an ice cream van in the background, very rude to disturb me, but moving on, we do have this idea that perhaps Ricardo Diaz does have this martial arts expertise, because we saw him fight a few times and he was very much a skilled fighter. So how is he able to do this if he didn't have any training? Well, he could have had training, and who by? Well, the Longbow Hunters. Now, the rest of the Longbow Hunters in the comics are made up of characters such as Red Dart, Brick, and Killer Moth. Now, these three characters are most likely not going to show up in Arrow. Now, Brick actually has already showed up on Arrow. He was in Season 3 in the form of Danny Brickwell, played by Vinnie Jones, quite famously. And, you know, that character, he's not coming back, and he's not going to be a member of the Longbow Hunters. He's just not. Also, in terms of the other characters, Killer Moth is a very obscure Batman villain, very, you know, weird kind of esoteric Batman villain. He will not be in the show, I heavily doubt. I'd love to see Arrow do a take on Killer Moth, and maybe this could be their way to do it, but I just don't see Killer Moth showing up on the show at all. And Red Dart, I think Red Dart is probably the most likely, but again, I don't really see how they do this. I feel like the Longbow Hunters are going to be a completely separate entity. I think the Longbow Hunters are going to be three potentially unnamed assassins, or if they are going to get a lot more development than that, they are going to be all completely new characters, personally, and I don't think they will be characters from the comics. I think they will be completely original characters, completely new characters that we've never seen before, and they're going to be working with Ricardo Diaz, and Ricardo Diaz is going to be the ringleader, as it were. So the Longbow Hunters have quite a extensive history, especially with the Green Arrow in the comics, especially because obviously the leader being Richard Dragon, aka Ricardo Diaz, he actually put a hit out on the Green Arrow's head, and this caused everyone to kind of go after him, and this was kind of his goal, because he wanted to kill the Green Arrow, because supposedly the Green Arrow killed his father. And this isn't the storyline they obviously went down with Arrow. They went down a different storyline. They kind of actually did that storyline with Caden James, actually, thinking about it. But instead, with Ricardo Diaz, he actually just wanted to take over the city, and the Green Arrow was just something in his way. But perhaps this is going to be something he's going to introduce to try and get the Longbow Hunters involved a bit more by saying, you know, if you kill this guy, I'll give you, you know, all the money that I have, because he's basically got quite a bit of money after the Star City takeover. Even though he has kind of been rid of the corruption now, I'm sure he has some leftovers going on there. Now, with Ricardo Diaz working with the Longbow Hunters, he's going to surely do some damage, and I think this is going to lead to the death of a major character on the show. Now, match this up with what Kirk Acevedo has said. He said if he has his way, he wants to kill one of Arrow's big three, which is obviously either Oliver Queen, John Diggle, or Felicity Smoke. Personally, I think Diggle is the most likely because obviously, as I've said for a while now, I think Diggle has had a target on his back for a really long time. And I've always felt that because of his connection to Ricardo Diaz, as he bought drugs from him, you know, back at the start of Season 6, I feel like he is going to be the one to be killed off. I feel like, you know, for Ricardo Diaz to really have that emotional gut punch, I mean, he did kill Quinton, but, you know, I feel like he has to kill one of Team Arrow, like a big member of Team Arrow, and who bigger really than Diggle? You know, the kind of like Oliver's first sidekick, if you will, or just, you know, first kind of teammate. And I feel like, you know, I've always said that I think Diggle, he's ran out of storylines. They need to kind of give him a big send-off, and I feel like if he was killed by Ricardo Diaz and the Longbow Hunters, that would be a really good way to establish the Longbow Hunters as a real true threat, and also as a really nice way to send off Diggle from the show. Also, at Heroes and Villains FanFest 2018, Kirk Acevedo did say to my podcast co-host, Dan, he did say to him that he would actually love to chop off Oliver's arm. Now, this is very interesting because if you remember back to Legends of Tomorrow, Season 1, there was that episode where we went to the Future Star City and Oliver actually lost his arm and he had a robotic arm for the final fight scene. Now, that timeline has been erased as of Legends, but who's to say that that still won't happen? Who's to say that Oliver might not actually lose his arm? So, wouldn't it be awesome if Ricardo Diaz were to be the one to actually take off Oliver's arm? I think that would be an awesome thing to see, and then we'd have to see Oliver kind of deal with a robotic arm for however long Arrow goes on for at this point. I think that'd be really badass. But overall, whoever the Longbow Hunters end up being, no matter, you know, how they sort of end up being implemented into the show, I'm sure it's going to be awesome. I've really wanted to see the Longbow Hunters for a really long time, so it'd be awesome to see them kind of come in at this point and be led by Ricardo Diaz. It'd be an awesome team up, so I think they're going to be awesome. So make sure you tell me all your thoughts about the Longbow Hunters in the comment section down below. Are you excited about their arrival, and what do you think they're going to be on the show, and how do you think they're going to be implemented? Make sure you tell me all your thoughts in the comment section down below. So thank you guys for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give it a like, it will help me out a lot, and share this video with anyone and everyone you know who loves DC TV and get them to join the community. And as always guys, please subscribe for all of your latest content on Supergirl, The Flash, Legends of Tomorrow, Arrow and Black Lightning. And with all that said guys, I hope to see you again in my next video.